tonight who stood here a long time to join us in this rally. You didn't come here because of me, or because of our conservatism. You came because you're concerned about America. To know that the future is brighter than the past. To know that we're passing on to our kids a land more free and more prosperous even than that which we enjoyed. And that's coming back. That confidence is coming back. I was so saddened to see that the majority of Americans, for the first time in history, think the future is more bleak, not better. We could change that. Because what's in here? The heart of the American people is strong. The heart of the American people has been proven time and time again in test after test. Regardless of the challenge, we stand and overcome those challenges. I know it's true. I've seen it. I've seen people in the most extreme circumstances who dig deep and show that kind of courage. It brings qualities of the human spirit I see in my fellow Americans, day in and day out. I was in Atlanta a few weeks ago for a big event, and I saw kind of an opening in the crowd. And as I went along shaking hands, I realized that was because someone there was in a wheelchair, a big one of these motorized wheelchairs. And I sort of pushed some people aside to see who it was. Turned out it was a classmate of mine from graduate school. And he'd been involved in an automobile accident. I think it was an automobile accident. And he was made quadriplegic. He was a very successful business person. And instead of throwing in the towel and becoming despondent, he kept involved in his business. He became active in raising money and working with a center for spinal cord injury research to make sure that other people would not suffer what he suffered. I saw the character of Billy Hulse as I saw him that day. And he moved his chair up, motorized it up next to me, and I put my hand on his shoulder. I hadn't seen him for a little while. I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, "God bless you, Billy, and I love you." The next day I heard he passed away. It's rare you get the chance to say to someone that you care about what you really feel. I love this country. I love the people of this country. I was at the Republican convention a few weeks ago, as you know, in Tampa. I met a wonderful woman named Jane Horton. She was packing a box of birthday presents and food and so forth to send to her husband in Afghanistan, who's a sharpshooter there. Well, the knock came at the door. Tell her that he'd been killed. And instead of her becoming depressed, she went to work to try and help other families who've lost loved ones. And on the day of the funeral, by the way, of her husband, she was dismayed, I'm sure, to see that there was a protest at the funeral. Remember this, where there were some of these people that were protesting funerals and some misguided souls. And she was asked, "What do you think about these protesters?" And her answer says something about the American heart. She said, "Chris gave his life so people like that can protest." This is the American spirit. This is the greatness of this nation. Which has touched the my heart, one I won't forget. I was at a Boy Scout Court of Honor. And a Court of Honor is where Boy Scouts get their Eagle Award or get other awards. And I was in the Boy Scout program at the time, so I was up in the front of the room, and we had this big Formica table, and I was sitting down at the end of the table next to the flagpole. And the person who was speaking was the Scoutmaster from Monument, Colorado. He was telling quite a story. He said that the Boy Scouts and his troop had wanted to have a very special American flag. So they bought one with gold tassels around the outside, and then they had it flown, I believe, over the state capitol and also in the capital of Washington, D.C. When it came home, the boys said, "Now we want it to go up on the space shuttle." And so they contacted NASA and said, "We'd like our flag to go on the space shuttle." And you know, space is at a premium in space, you know. And yet NASA agreed. He said, "Okay, we'll take your flag with us." And as you can imagine, he said the boys were so proud, looking from their home rooms at school, watching the space shuttle launch, watching the rocket go up in the air, knowing that their flag was on that space shuttle, and then they saw it explode on the TV screen. And he said he called NASA about 2 weeks later and asked them had they found any remnant of their flag. And they said no. And every week, for several months, he called and called. "Have you found anything? Have you found any part of our flag?" "No, they haven't. No, they haven't." September, he said he was looking at an article in the newspaper, and it talked about the debris they had found with the Challenger disaster. And as they're going down, he saw something about a flag. So he called NASA again, and sure enough, they had found something they wanted to present to him. So we got the Boy Scouts together, and NASA came and made a presentation, and it was a container, a plastic container. He said, we opened up the container, and there was our flag in perfect condition.
Putting makeup on.
And then he said, and it's on the flagpole there next to Mr. Romney at the end of the table. And I reached over and put my hand on the flag and pulled it out. And it was as if electricity was running through my eyes. Because I thought about those NASA astronauts, pioneers, who lived for something bigger than themselves, who put themselves in harm's way so we could learn, pioneering, new avenues of learning, understanding space in ways that might help their fellow Americans and fellow men and women. That's the nature of the American people. We live for something bigger than ourselves. We look for opportunities to serve in our community, our school, our faith, our family.
Excuse me.
That American spirit I see in the dads and moms are working 2 jobs these days, working 2 jobs so they can afford to give their kids the clothes they need so they don't stand out at school. I think of the single moms who are scrimping and saving to put food on the table, particularly at the end of the pay period. I think of the kids coming out of high school and college who put aside their career and say, I'm going to sign up for the military because my country needs me right now. And I think of the moms and dads who at Christmas time decide not to exchange gifts so they can instead afford a great Christmas for their children. But this is America. This is who we are. This is why at a time like this we come together. We face extraordinary challenges around the world and here. So many people in the world, so much death, so many people in turmoil around the world. This is a time for America to have leadership that will help guide us together again, that will call on the greatness of the American spirit, that will do what it takes to restore the strength of our homes and our values, to know how to rebuild